Hello, guys. Welcome back to the MMA Sucka podcast. As always, I'm your host, Fraser Crone. And what a week it's been in the world of combat sports, specifically in the world of the UFC. I will be breaking down, as you can see from the rundown here. We've got fight news. I want to talk about Dakota Ditcheva, UFC Fight Night review, UFC Saudi Arabia preview, and then the preview of the Bellator and PFL cards this weekend. But first thing on the agenda, fight news. Don't know if you've heard, but Conor McGregor's out of his UFC 303 fight. Is that breaking news? I don't think so. But unfortunately, it is a fact. Conor McGregor has had to withdraw from a fight due to injury for the first time in his career. And I'm not too mad about it, to be honest. I want Conor McGregor at 100% when he walks to the octagon for what I think will be the last time, win or lose. I think it'll be the last time that we see him in the octagon. So if he is carrying a little injury, supposedly it's an aggravated injury from the leg break that he had against Dustin Poirier. If he is carrying a little injury and he goes in there against Michael Chandler not 100%, I'm not saying that Conor would make excuses, but that's not the Conor I want to see. I want to see Conor at 100%. He's spoken to his team, he's spoken to, his doctors, and they've advised him to postpone the fight, not cancel the fight altogether, but postpone the fight. Like I said, I'm not too mad about it. If he isn't fit to make the walk to the octagon, like he probably wasn't fit to make the walk to the octagon against Dustin Poirier, don't make that walk. It's a dangerous place in there, especially with someone like Michael Chandler, who, let's be honest, will attack the leg. He's not stupid. He's got, the team at Henry Hooft in Florida and those guys over there. They know how to win fights. Kamaru Usman and the like. The Black Zillions now called, I think it's Hard Knocks 365 or whatever they're called. Michael Chandler's team know how to win fights. They know how to game plan for fights. And Chandler would have attacked the leg of Conor in that one. If his leg's not 100%, his leg's not 100%. But it's not a fact of Conor McGregor being replaced. It's the whole fight has been postponed till later on in the year. I don't think they'll do it at the Sphere. It doesn't really make sense to do it in Perth, Australia at UFC 305. Of course, UFC 304 is too, A, it's too soon, but B, it's also, you know, we've already got the interim heavyweight title fight. We've already got the welterweight title fight. That's 76 weeks away in Manchester. Like I said, I don't think they're going to do it in September at the Sphere. And I think UFC 307, I'll just double check because I don't want to sort of misinformation, but I think it's in Utah. Now, yeah, Salt Lake City, Utah. Now that really doesn't make sense. And nor does UFC 308 in October. That's from the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, their sort of annual show in Abu Dhabi that we assume will be headlined by Islam Makhachev, depending on, viable contenders and whatnot, whether someone like an Arman Sarukian wants to travel to Abu Dhabi, UAE to actually to have that fight. But this is what this is the difficulty. That there isn't a logical next pay-per-view for Conor to compete on until, November. But then even in November, it's the traditional annual MSG card. That one, I think they're targeting John Jones's return against Stipe Miocic like they were last year. That's the fight card that they're targeting for that. So we might have to wait 6 months, another 6 months until what would it be? UFC 310, maybe UFC 311. I can't quite work it out to see Conor McGregor fight, and that'll be in Vegas on the it's usually in December. They sometimes do an end of the year card after Christmas. I think they did that with Ronda Rousey and Amanda Nunes and Cody Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz, or sometime in December. Now there were discussions of moving the UFC 3. Let me just double check. UFC 307 card from Utah to Vegas, and having Conor compete in that, you're probably looking at October, late September, early October for that card. That's a potential. So keep an eye on UFC 307. But coming back, like I said, fight news. We've still got a fight. UFC 303, in my opinion, is now a better card now that Conor McGregor's not on it. Nothing against Conor McGregor, of course. I just think the card is a lot more solid now. We've got a main event rematch on what, 3 weeks' notice between Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka. Now, that alone is a phenomenal fight. We've got a new co-main event, Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. We've got a fill-in for the former champion Jamal Hill with Anthony Smith coming into the fight. And I'm assuming that all of the rest of the fights are staying on that card for now. Ian Gary, Michael Venom Page. I'm not going to talk about it today, but keep an eye on that fight. Does it make sense being on that card, or would it make more sense pushing that fight back to being in the UK for UFC 304? We shall see. But the main event, Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka, I'm going to obviously go into far more detail about it when when I'm previewing the fight. That'll be next week's show, because this show is in 2 weeks' time. We've obviously got the UFC Saudi Arabia card this weekend, where we've had a fight pull out, but I'll talk more about that on the preview for the UFC Saudi Arabia card. We've got a new main event there, but it's a phenomenal fight to make at short notice. Alex Pereira, is a gangster. He's been in the UFC what seems like 6 weeks and has had about 19 fights. And he's not a young man anymore, born in 87, so that makes him what, late 30s, 35, 36. And he's, like I said, just a gangster. He saved UFC 300. He's now saving UFC 303. And let's not forget, we need to get Alex Pereira out for another fight again this year as well. He'll probably feature on that MSG card. So don't be surprised if he's a headliner in MSG again. But what I would say is fair play to Jiri Prochazka, because this is his last crack at Alex Pereira. And fair play to Alex Pereira, because he didn't have to take this fight. He literally just fought in April. If you look at since moving up to light heavyweight, he's fought in July, November where he won the belt off. Well, November where he won the belt in the vacant fight against Prochazka. He then literally flew in to save you at UFC 300 against Jamal Hill. 3 minutes work against Jamal Hill is what it is. Simple work in April. He suffered a broken toe, I think, in that fight, or in the lead up to that fight. He suffered a broken toe after that fight, so he's healing both of them. And he still makes the walk to the octagon. He still signs up to compete at UFC 303 in the main event. Phenomenal stuff from the UFC to be able to get that together at such short notice. Phenomenal stuff from Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka to sign up to that fight at such short notice. For me, it's a difficult fight for Pereira because Jiri Prochazka's got a strange style. I don't know if he would have accepted the fight against Prochazka had he not already fought him once. And let's not forget, let me just pull up the stats from their previous fight, because Jiri Prochazka did very well in that fight until he didn't. He took Alex Pereira down in that first round, controlled him for 2.5 minutes. He was landing, and he wasn't getting hit with an awful lot of shots. But if you remember his last fight at UFC 300 on the same card as Pereira, of course, his fight against Alexander Rakic landed hard and heavy on Jiri Prochazka a lot in that fight and wasn't able to even knock him down, knock him over, wobble him. And Jiri Prochazka was knocked out by Alex Pereira. It kind of just tells you how hard a hitter Alex Pereira is. But like I said, I'll go into far much more detail on that fight. We might even try and watch the fight together as a little sort of watch along of their first fight. And, I'll pass comment on that closer to the event. Co-main event, Brian Ortega, again, gangster move. He's fighting far down the rankings. Let me just pull up the UFC rankings here. I think he's ranked number 3. I'd imagine he's ranked number 3. Yeah, he's ranked number 3, Brian Ortega, coming off a very big win against Yair Rodriguez last time out. by submission in the third round, sorry. He's been very inactive, Brian Ortega, very inactive. But this will be the second time that we see him this year. He's ranked number 3. Diego Lopez, everybody's favorite fighter. He's ranked number 14. Number 14, Diego Lopez. And Brian Ortega is willing to take a fight with him on short notice. He's on a 3-fight win streak, Diego Lopez, all of them by finish, all of them um, in the first round. Obviously, his last win was his biggest win against Sadiq Youssef, that knockout in the first round at UFC 300. Um, a really good fight to put together at short notice. And fair play to Anthony Smith as well. Anthony Smith takes on the up-and-coming killer that very few really want to fight, Carlos Ulberg. Let's not forget that the original fight was Jamala Hill versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. That one never went ahead. And now this one, Anthony Smith versus Carlos Ulberg, is going ahead. I'm not too mad about it. I don't think it's a bad fight at all. But that's kind of your fight news without talking about UFC Saudi Arabia. UFC Saudi Arabia, because I'm going to go on to talk about that in more detail, really. But moving on, I put Dakota Ditcheva here. It's really, I want to talk about PFL 4, but the highlight, as always, of course, is Dakota Ditcheva. Just a couple of more results from the card. We've got Tim Johnson winning, Juliana Velasquez winning, Talia Santos winning a split decision. I didn't think it was a split. I think she pretty clearly won that. Liz Carmouche pulling off an armbar in the final 10 seconds of a fight, which she was potentially losing. Denis Goltsov knocking out Thiago Santos. Thiago Santos taking the fight on short notice. Then we've got Dakota Ditcheva, which I want to go on to talk about in a second. And then we've got Linton Vassell beat Valentin Moldovsky via split decision in the main event. But for me, it was all about the co-main event, as it always is every time that she fights. Dakota Ditcheva getting a first round TKO hooked to the. I've not got enough words for this girl, how good she is. She joined the PFL in 2022. I was in the arena working with media for her debut. She's won 7 straight now in the PFL, all by finish. And I think, yeah, only one has got out of the first round, and that was Cornella, and she got finished in the third round. More often than not, you look at the guys and girls competing in anywhere but the UFC, and you think for me, it's a little bit of a tough decision to make, as it were, as to how good these guys and girls are, because you look at them and you think, well, the level of competition isn't there. And for example, you stick top of the bill, Linton Vassell. You stick Linton Vassell in there with any or the majority of decent UFC heavyweights, and unfortunately for Vassell, he loses. Denis Goltsov's an interesting one, but I think you stick Denis Goltsov in there with, again, the majority of UFC heavyweights, he loses. Liz Carmouche, she wasn't exactly top of the tree when she was in the UFC. Yes, she did compete for a title a couple of times, but she's not. There's no debating that Liz Carmouche is not the best in the world. Same with Talia Santos. I can keep on going, but you get the gist. With Dakota Ditcheva, there is a real question as to whether she is the best flyweight in the world, regardless of promotion. I think if you sort of pick her out of the PFL and put her in the UFC, she's easily top 5. Easily top 5. I'd say top 3. I think she beats Jessica Andrade. I think she beats Macy Barber. I think she beats Erin Blanchfield, especially after that last performance. Then the girls at the top of the tree, I think, are tough fights for her. But that's not to say that she wouldn't beat those girls as well. Manon Fiorot, I think she matches up very well with Valentina Shevchenko. I think that'd be a phenomenal fight. And Alexa Grasso, I think, would be a phenomenal fight as well. It's a sort of Muay Thai kickboxing versus Alexa Grasso's slick boxing and takedown ability. Again, what I want to see from Dakota Ditcheva is a higher level of competition, because unfortunately, she just hasn't had that sort of higher level of competition. Which is completely understandable. If you can't provide that higher level of competition in the PFL, it depends what your goal is. She's the face of the PFL, as was Kayla Harrison, for example. Kayla's now obviously made the transition over to the UFC and is thriving and thrived in her debut. The girls that Dakota faced, or has faced, I should say, in the PFL, Hasna Gaber had no business being in there with her for a debut, but it's a debut. The girls that she faced in PFL Europe, I mean, they had a combined 13 and 11 record. There's not much surprise that she beat those girls. You then go to the regular season that she's in now. Lisa Muldoon, again, you know, at the time she had a 6-4 record, I think, a 6-3 record, sorry. Um, it's a better fight, but this is a girl that lost to, Sam Hughes, who is not really made it in the UFC even. She's 8-4 in the UFC. Then she was matched with Chelsea Hackett, and some people thought that maybe Chelsea Hackett. She's 24 years old. She had the opportunity on the Contender Series, and she lost that opportunity via second round ground and pound finish. She then took 3 years out of the sport completely, came back, faced Kai Bennett, and beat Kai Bennett via rear naked choke. She was a slight favorite in that one, but then she lost to Jenna Bishop first round down by. Now she loses to Dakota Ditcheva via first round TKO. Dakota Ditcheva was a minus 1,200 favorite, just for context in this one. Dakota is so good, but she needs a competition to push her on that next level, in my opinion. She faces Jenna Bishop next. You got Talia Santos versus Liz Carmouche in the other side of the semi-final. I think Dakota has got the easier side of the draw. I think, Jenna Bishop is an easier matchup for her. But with that being said, Jenna Bishop is now, she's that's her first professional loss in MMA. She's now 7-1. She's going to come back with a vengeance. But at 38, how much has she got left to give? We'll see. But Dakota Ditcheva, I just wanted to, it is it was a PFL 4 section, but it's all about this girl, Dakota Ditcheva. Moving on, we've got UFC Fight Night review time. I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time on this because I thought the card was bang average, to be honest. Josephine Knutston opened the card, did what I think she could potentially do to a lot of people at 115 pounds. I think her day is a numbered at 115. I think she's very big. She progressed to 8-0 with a unanimous decision victory over Julia Palastri. It's the way the main event finished is a shame because Tassoro Tiara did finish Alex Perez, I guess, due to it was counted as a TKO. It was an injury, and you feel for Alex Perez because he's finally just starting to make a little headway almost to actually get out there regularly, to compete regularly, and then he suffers an injury in what was a big fight for him. It's disappointing, like I said, but realistically, for Perez, he's unlikely to he's 32. He's had a whole host of weight cutting issues. He's had a whole host of injuries that have kept him out. It's really disappointing for him, but you know, it's not the end of the world for Perez. He can always have that in the back of his mind, and he can always have that to say to people that, I was confident of winning that fight had I not got injured. Just looking at the flyweight rankings, I tell you who did piss me off is Tagir Ulanbekov. Obviously didn't make weight for this fight, and his fight with Joshua Van was cancelled. That pissed me off because I was really excited for that one. I just want to see Joshua Van fight. He's 10-1. And he competed in January. He's had 4 cancelled fights since then. He's got to feel pretty gutted about that. Let's just leave it at that. But yeah, four cancelled fights since then. I just want to see Joshua Van out there as soon as possible because I just think he's excellent. But moving on. Oh no, I was going to look at the rankings, wasn't I? I was going to look at the rankings. Yeah. So you've got Alex Perez ranked number 5, Tatsuro ranked number 13. I'm interested to see how big a leap Tatsuro can get. I'm also interested to see if they put him, who they match him with next, because he called for a title shot. I don't think he'll get a title shot, but who knows? Steve Erskine got a title shot. Do they match him with? I really don't know who they match him with, because flyweight is now a very competitive division. You know, Steve Erskine just gave Pantoja hell, and he's ranked number 9. You've got Mohamed Mokaev and Manal Cap scheduled for Manchester. You got Amir Albazi, who hasn't really put a foot wrong, but just hasn't got a title shot yet due to injury. You've got Ulan Bekov now, who has had to pull out of a fight due to missing weight. You've got Joshua Van not even ranked. Cody Durden's in there. Brandon Moreno, of course, is just sort of sat on the outside waiting for a bit. They're exciting times, but I don't know what they do with Tatsuro next, but we'll have to wait and see. Moving on and moving out of America over to Saudi Arabia for UFC Fight Night. Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. This is what I was alluding to. Again, it's not breaking news unless you've been living under a rock. Ikram Aliskerov is filling in for the injured, ill, unable to fight Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I was debating whether I was going to discuss on this podcast whether the UFC actually want Khamzat Chimaev to beat Robert Whittaker. Let's be honest, and let's call a spade, regardless of what Dana White says, he has in mind fighters that he wants to win fights for business purposes. This one was a difficult one because Khamzat Chimaev is potentially a big name, but he's unreliable. Unfortunately for Khamzat, he joined the UFC in 2020. He had 3 fights in record-breaking time. He had John Phillips, he fought on the 15th of July, 2020. Reece McKee, he fought on the 25th of July, 2020. And then Jared Meerschaert, he fought on the 19th of September, 2020. And after that, he took a year out. And since then, he's only had 4 fights. He completely ruined UFC 279. Completely ruined it. I don't care what anybody says. He ruined that card. Single-handedly ruined that card. Single-handedly forced 3 fights to be rescheduled on that card. He pulled out against Leon Edwards, I think 3 times or 2 times, and the bout was rescheduled once. He arguably lost to Gilbert Burns, but Gilbert Burns gave him absolute hell. He had a fight cancelled against Paulo Costa, forcing Kamaru Usman to come in there on short notice. Again, I would have said that fight was a draw. I think he 10-8'd Usman in that first round, and then Usman won the last 2 rounds. And now he's had to pull out against Robert Whittaker, and there's discussions about him retiring from MMA. I don't want to see it happen because I think he is a phenomenal talent, Khamzat. But if he, respectfully, and I mean this with the greatest of respect, if he is unable to make the walk, he is not a good fighter. I mean that, if he cannot get his diet in check, if his body just cannot handle it. I know it's his profession and it's his passion, it's his love, but it's not worth risking your health over like that. But we've still got a pretty decent main event. Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. Whittaker, I'm not going to talk too much about Whittaker because we know about Whittaker. He's got phenomenal takedowns. He's got phenomenal takedown defense. His in and out karate movement is some of the best in the division in the UFC. He's got one of the most potent jabs that he actually uses as a weapon as opposed to just using it to stick it out as a rangefinder. He's accurate. He doesn't mind a scrap as well, Robert Whittaker. And that is what I think is important, especially against someone like Aliskerov, which could play against him. Aliskerov has got, I think he's 2-0 or 3-0 in the UFC. 2-0 in the UFC. Phil Hawes and Waller Alves, both of them first round knockouts. He carries power early. Does he carry power? Does he carry power late? We'll have to wait and see. Let's not forget this guy was scheduled to fight Paulo Costa in his second UFC fight. That one didn't go ahead. Then it was Nassourdine Imanov. That one didn't go ahead. Then it was Anthony Hernandez. That one didn't go ahead. None of these are Alex Zerov's fault, by the way. Apart from, well, Anthony Hernandez, he was due to injury. He's supposed to be fighting Andre Muniz on the UFC Fight Night card I've just spoke about. Muniz pulled out. Then he was scheduled to fight Antonio Tricoli. He's obviously been rebooked. So the UFC, I think, do put a lot of stock into Ikram Aliskerov, and I'd say rightfully so. He looks like a really good, I'd say, prospect at this point. He's getting the opportunity of a lifetime against Robert Whittaker because realistically, we've heard that both Sean Strickland and Kamaru Usman were offered the fight against Robert Whittaker. We've heard conflicting stories about Kamaru Usman, whether Kamaru Usman accepted it or turned it down. We've heard that he turned it down, but then we've heard Ali Abdelaziz say, his manager say, no, he accepted that fight. And with Sean Strickland, we haven't heard anything to say that he accepted the fight. He supposedly just turned it down because he's, waiting for this title shot. Robert Whittaker is a slight favourite on -145 in this one. But it's not like Alex Zerov is a late notice fight, as in he hasn't been preparing for a fight. He's going to come straight off the couch. He was preparing for a fight this weekend. Yes, it was a 3-rounder, but it is what it is. Like I say, Alex Zerov's been given the opportunity of a lifetime here. You beat Robert Whittaker, you beat one of the best guys in the division. You look at the guys at middleweight that have beaten Robert Whittaker. At middleweight, there's only two. There's two men that have beaten Robert Whittaker, and both of them have either a past or the current title holder in Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis. Robert Whittaker's beaten some of the best names at middleweight. You've got Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vettori, Paulo Costa. On his run up to the title, Derek Brunson, Jacare Souza, that war with Yoel Romero, twice he beat Yoel Romero, and then he lost to Israel Adesanya, as we know. If Ikram Aliskerov beats Robert Whittaker, he changes his life. It's as simple as that. He catapults himself from, where is he ranked in the division? From unranked in the division, Alex Zerov, unranked in the division at the moment, and he's facing the number 3 guy. He can catapult himself into that title picture with one win. And that's why he took the fight, and that's why the fight's exciting. Co-main event, we've got the return of Sergey Pavlovich. He comes in to take on Alexander Volkov. Weird fight to be having in Saudi Arabia, I'll be honest. I'm not sure how these two big Russians sort of personalities will transfer to a Saudi Arabian audience, the Saudi Arabian media that's obviously going to be all over this. It is what it is. It's happening. I don't mind it. Pavlovich, of course, was on an absolute collision course with everybody in the UFC until he ran into Big Tom Aspinall. He scored 6 straight first round knockouts, including knockouts over the likes of Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa, and Curtis Blades. Then he suffered a first round knockout of his own against Tom Aspinall. And it's a similar story for Alexander Volkov. He's, since losing to Tom Aspinall in that main event in the first round, he's seen somewhat of a career revival. He TKO'd Rosenstruik, he TKO'd Alexander Romanov, and then he submitted Tai Tuivasa last time out. I quite like this fight. It's like I say, if Pavlovich can keep it long, like he did against Derek Lewis for 14.5 minutes, I think, if Volkov can keep it long, like he did against Derek Lewis for 14.5 minutes, he can do really well in this fight. It's going to be a tough one to do because Pavlovich just hits so hard. The jab is knocking people out, but it's an exciting fight, especially as a co-main event. I think we're getting a finish in that one. It's probably going to go the way of Pavlovich, but if Volkov can keep it long, he puts himself in a really good position. The return of Daniel Rodriguez, he faces Calvin Gastelum at welterweight. Calvin Gastelum obviously dropped down to welterweight to face Sean Brady last time out. Didn't really go his way. He was really badly out wrestled. Daniel Rodriguez coming off 2 straight finish losses, hasn't won since September 22. So we'll see how that one goes. Mohammed Naimov Hillman, I can't pronounce his name. I thought he lost. I don't think he's a very good fighter, to be honest. I thought he should have lost against Nathaniel Wood. He should have had multiple points taken away. He then won his last one via leg injury for his opponent. He takes on Melsik Bagdasarian. Johnny Walker returns. Always blockbuster TV, Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker's a strange one. He was almost got a title shot and then didn't, and then almost gets a title shot and then didn't, and then knocks someone out in really devastating fashion, and then gets knocked out in really devastating fashion. Last time, as we know, he was knocked out in January by Magomed Ankalaev. He returned to face Volkan Oezdemir, who, I'll be honest, almost forgot Volkan Oezdemir was still in the UFC. Let me just look. Volkan Oezdemir is ranked number 9. He's just a strange fighter, Volkan Oezdemir. Let's not forget that he joined the UFC, got a title shot after 3 wins, one of which being a split decision. He's a fun fighter, Volkan Oezdemir. If he lands on you, it's game over, but that's only if he lands on you. Sharon Magomedov's got a point to prove because he came into the UFC with a whole lot of hype and he didn't really live up to that hype, in my opinion. He takes on, I think, promotional newcomer in Jolton Lutterbach from Brazil, who hasn't had an MMA fight. Hasn't had an MMA fight since April of last year, but he's fought a lot in kickboxing. He's had a boxing match in a cage. He's fought in karate a couple of times for karate combat. Should be a good one. Clever matchmaking because Shower and Magomedov looked pretty vulnerable in the wrestling game, so give him a karate guy. I don't know anything about Lutterbach, I'm not going to lie. You've got Nasrat Haqparast versus Jared Gordon. You've got your fight of the night, without a doubt, is going to be Rinyat Fakhreddinov versus Nicholas Dalby. I'd put money on that. And then another sort of late notice fight that has been Abu Azatar pulled out and is replaced by Cedric Dumas. Dumas last time obviously lost to Rizaboyev. That's UFC Saudi Arabia card. It's not a bad card at all. But on the same day, you've got Bellator Championship Series or Bellator Dublin. I think it's in Dublin. Yeah, it's in Dublin, where Jason Jackson takes on Razman Kuramagomedov. Paul Hughes makes his debut against Bobby King. Remember, Paul Hughes was the hottest free agent for a long time before signing for Bellator, PFL Bellator, whatever you want to call them these days. Sinead Kavanagh takes on Arlene Blenklo. Kaslan Magomed Sharapov takes on Tyler Matheson. This is one to keep an eye out for. Simeon Powell takes on Abdullah El Rami. Simeon Powell obviously got to the final of PFL Europe last year, finishing people left, right, and centre. Did lose in that final, so he's on the comeback trail. Undefeated Sarah Collins takes on Elena Kolensik, the Ukrainian girl that got to the final last year. Michelle Montague, undefeated, takes on Carolina Sobek. That's pretty much it for your Yancy Medeiros versus Peter Queally. Unfortunately, was cancelled. I think Peter Queally pulled out of that one with an injury or an illness. We've also got the regular season of the PFL continuing. Main event, Mads Bernal versus Clay Collard. Co-main event, last year's champion Impa Kasanganay takes on Jacob Nido, the guy who beat Simeon Powell. Patricky Pitbull takes on Bruno Miranda. Rob Wilkinson returns after his ban to face Josh Silveira. Oh no, that was anyway, he didn't return. He was out in April. Brent Primus is on this card. Sabadou Sai versus Tom Breeze is on this card. Andrew Sanchez versus Kyle Albrechtsen is on this card. So it's, the PFL and Bellator have got a pretty decent card, but it's pretty much all about that UFC main event and co-main event between Robert Whittaker and Ikram Aliskerov and Sergey Pavlovich and Alexander Volkov. Next week, I'll be breaking down those fights and giving you a UFC 303 in-depth preview. Also, I've got a lot of the plans going on in here. I've got a lot of plans for an upcoming new series on MMASucka.com. I'll be breaking down a couple of fights. Let's just let's just say that for now. Something to look forward to. I'm really excited for the series to drop. Keep on the social. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for when the series drops. You want to be watching it straight away. But there's a lot of planning going in behind the scenes, a lot of rewatching old fights. Let's just say that. So keep it locked. Like I said, subscribe, like the video, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.